Hello and welcome to Game Changer, empowering citizen developers for digital transformation. My name is Michelle Martz Mayfield. I'm the PR and Corporate Communications Manager for TrackVia. We're going to start out with a few housekeeping details here before we get started. You will have started in listen-only mode, and we ask that you keep yourselves in listen-only mode for the entirety of the presentation so that everyone can hear what's going on. We will have a little time for Q&A, hopefully at the end, if you have questions. You can submit your questions via the chat window, and if we don't get to those, we'll follow up with those that we don't answer live. This webinar is being recorded, and we will provide you with a link to this recording 48 hours after the event. That's all for the housekeeping details. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters with Matt Hubbard.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Hubbard with TrackVia. We've got 3 speakers for you today. I will be your host. We've also got Dr. Noel Carroll, who is doing research on digital transformation and citizen development. And we've got Lucas Parsons from Rad Power Bikes, who is on his own citizen development journey. And so we'll hear from both. The agenda for today is kind of interesting. I will basically start out by interviewing Noel about his research project. And then we'll turn things over to Noel so that he can conduct some of his research with Lucas, asking him questions about his citizen development journey. And then we'll conclude with Q&A for everybody at the end. And as Michelle said, go ahead, if you have questions along the way, just submit those by chat and we'll be sure to address them at the end. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with learning about Noel and his digital transformation research. So Noel, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. Thank you. Thank you
for
having me.
You bet. You're looking sharp, man. I really appreciate you coming today. So why don't we start with a little bit about who you are. Normally I would do the introductions, but no, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different titles there. And I figure you could cover that a little bit better. So maybe a little something personal about yourself and then lead into your professional.
Sure. So I'll try and cover some detail. So I'm based in Galway, which is located in the west of Ireland. I'm a lecturer at NUIG Galway, and also carry out research here in NUIG Galway in areas of digital transformation and citizen development. It's a great university, I suppose, a great university to be part of. Really good colleagues to collaborate on areas of information systems, innovation, and strategy, and so on. And digital transformation, I suppose, is something that's close to my own heart. And as part of that, we began to identify a number of key problems in the area of digital transformation. And recently had been awarded funding to set up the Citizen Development Lab, which is kind of a lot of the, I suppose, focus of this research that we're going to talk about later today.
All right, fantastic. And that's what we want to hear about. I am all in on citizen development, and then hearing that somebody with a PhD is doing research on citizen development and believes that it can help with transformation, digital transformation, really gets me excited. So I can't wait to hear your story. So let's jump into that, Noel. So let's start first with what the heck is digital transformation? And I ask from this perspective. When I first heard about digital transformation, I was pretty excited because I think digital tools are going to change the world for the better. But digital transformation quickly became a buzzword, and it was almost watered down to the point where I didn't even know what it was anymore. So if you wouldn't mind, tell us from your perspective what it is and clarify that for us.
Sure, yeah, I think you've actually hit the nail on the head there, in terms of the overuse, kind of use of the term, in terms of digital transformation. I've included an image here of a unicorn, which it's often described almost as being the silver bullet, if you like, and I see a lot of organizations are including the use of digital transformation, and it could be anything from a radical transformation, like a large-scale transformation of an organization, all the way up to a update of website development or something like that. So the range in terms of what organizations view a digital transformation as, is quite startling. So that's one of the challenges, even from a research perspective, to try and I suppose reduce the noise in terms of what we see as a digital transformation. And there's a lot of focus, I think, on the whole area of the digital aspects, the bells and whistles as such. From my perspective, I think we should put a lot more focus on the transformation process itself and how we begin to uncover what's actually happening in there. So I often use car analogies as such, and I describe it, I suppose, a digital transformation as being the engine, if you like. And I think it's important for us as researchers to lift the hood of the, of the car to understand what's actually happening in terms of the engine block and the mechanics and everything else. So I describe it here, in terms of research perspective, as an evolving process which must sustain, be sustained by embedding a new culture, new structures, and reconfigure a stakeholder expectation by leveraging digital resources to create value and new experiences. So all of these points that I've highlighted here in bold are something that I'm going to touch on a little later on, I suppose, to highlight the importance of citizen development, which touches on many of these expectations as well.
I got it. I like your focus on the transformation bit. I think we often get focused on the digital part, that if we just bring in something digital and flip the switch and turn it on, there you go, we've digitally transformed. And sometimes those things don't stick. Transformation implies becoming something new, right? And so I appreciate that emphasis. Okay, so that is what digital transformation is. Now, this next slide is one of the most interesting to me. It blew me away that there is a problem statement that you're trying to tackle. And that problem statement is on the slide. I'll let you speak to it, but I was blown away that there's so much failure with digital transformation that I'm like, why are we even talking about it anymore? So yeah, could you dive into the problem?
Yeah, so I guess this is kind of the area that really resonated with me, such, and something that kind of really stuck at me to try and uncover what exactly is the problem. Why are we still talking about digital transformation if it's such a high failure rate? And it's estimated that about 70% of digital transformations fail, and of the 30% that succeed, I think it's estimated that about 45% of the successful transformations actually make profit. So this kind of raises, I suppose, a lot of questions around why are we even talking about digital transformation? Or it may actually go back to your previous slide where there's a lot of uncertainty around what digital transformation actually accounts for. So the question for me is, and I suppose this is a core motivation as part of the research, is trying to uncover what exactly is going wrong, what's actually failing in the whole process. And I began looking at the digital aspects, in terms of new innovations, if it's cloud, if it's AI, for example. But what really stands out across all the literature that we're looking at is the uncertainty around the transformation process and the lack of guidance, the lack of guardrails, if you like, to guide executives or to guide kind of CTOs through that transformation process. So it's almost like launching a ship, if you like, and having no radar, as part of that, I suppose, expectation or that journey, and that's where we're beginning to see like a lot of issues in the transformation process.
Your analogy with the ship with no radar, I'm just imagining ships launching with great intentions, but hitting something that they can't see and sinking. So just like a graveyard of these 70% of digital transformations that fail. It's a really good image. And then I'm trying to do the math also. You said 70% fail, but of the 30% that don't fail, 45% make profit. So I'm almost viewing that as a success. So that's like less than 15% that are actually successful, right? Is that math right?
Yeah, that's roughly about, it's about right, yeah.
Oh wow, that is something that we should definitely solve. So I'm glad you're on this problem. So let's look at some of the causes now. So we've defined the problem as 70% fail, but now we got to understand why do they fail? And I've kind of got the slide laid out here as just a question, and we'll leave this to the audience. Okay, so the audience, if you wouldn't mind, just based on your experience and conjecture, what are some of the reasons you think digital transformations fail? And if you would, go ahead and type that into the chat, and we will email those responses to Noel for his research. But let's while you're doing that, while you're typing out your responses, we're going to proceed forward with what Noel has found to be some of the causes. And I'll offer my opinion here, Noel. Because digital transformation became such a buzzword, I feel like it didn't have much substance. When I would ask people who say they're working on digital transformation, what does success look like when you're done? It was usually a puzzling look that I would get. Like, I'm not quite sure what you mean. And so that lack of substance or clarity, I think, had a part in digital transformations failing. But let's go ahead and pivot to your thoughts on this, Noel, as the expert.
Yeah, so I think you actually hit the nail on the head there again. But it's really, I suppose at a high level, it's around the lack of guidance, in terms of the transformation process and ways to actually sustain that. There's an expectation that you launch a digital transformation and it's something that would almost organically look after itself within the organization. So it's a much more long-term game, and sometimes there's that organizational inertia, if you like, where people kind of burn out of, the enthusiasm for the transformation actually dwindles away. But overall, it really comes down to, I suppose, a number of key aspects. For example, the lack of know-how and the lack of that mindset around the digital transformation process. So we've often kind of spoke to kind of CEOs or CTOs that actually explain that there's a lack of guidance or lack of training around understanding the transformation journey itself and what's required to sustain that. It's not just about trying to keep the lights on each day, but it's about trying to, I suppose, innovate and trying to look at the long-term game and trying to also look at how do you de-risk the strategy going forward. So is it right for me to invest in AI right now, for example, or is there going to be a new fad or a new technology in the next 3, 4, 5 years? So how do you future-proof all these types of investments? And also, like with that element of risk, around a digital transformation, how do you begin to now balance the need for digital transformation against your day-to-day, I suppose, competing demands and priorities that you face? So, like a lot of CTOs, for example, are judged, based on certain KPIs and deliverables, basically for bonuses and everything else. So, how do you try to compete with all of those demands, in terms of reaching your deadlines and your expectations, and also trying to launch a digital transformation at the same time? Then there's
Noel, if you don't mind, you're piquing my interest on something here, and this is actually on the first reason, the lack of know-how and mindset. When you were describing that, it sounded like you said there's a risk component, and people can jump into a technology a little too early because of the hype and because of the promise that it offers, to kind of like that unicorn picture that you showed. Is it true, or do people jump in like to AI or robotic process automation or machine learning a little too early sometimes, and that is a result of the failure?
Yeah, well, in some cases that's true, because there's actually evidence, I suppose, to indicate that from a strategic perspective, like there's often a lot of uncertainty around the rationale or the need to invest in technology. There's an expectation that our competitors, for example, are investing in this, and we need to get into the game also. So there's kind of a gray area there, in many cases, around what exactly is the rationale. Is there a real business need, or is it just about trying to compete, or to show that you're investing in, I suppose, similar technologies and so on. So actually getting into I suppose the detail around the rationale or the motivation to invest in certain technologies as part of your digital transformation, not because it's a new fad, for example, that can often be a gray area, to say the least.
That really strikes a chord with me. I was working several years back, and there was a slide that was presented to a group of executives about the number of bots, robotic process automation, the number of bots in each executive's area. And some had a lot of bots and some had almost none. And the response was from those, there was pressure, basically, pressure from those that have none to say, well, I got to get me some bots. So, so that it shows that I'm kind of competing, but for what? Like bots to solve what problem? That's an interesting perspective, this idea of competition and keeping up.
Yeah, exactly. And that might actually also lead to that high failure rate, that it's almost like the Big Bang effect, where you invest in new technologies or new strategies, and it lives a short life. So that's something we're also interested in looking at.
Okay, well, thank you for indulging me on diving into that point.
Sure, yeah. The third point there, just I suppose briefly, is really around the lack of culture, and this is something that I suppose crops up quite a lot. And admittedly, I would have thought it was quite light, maybe, or kind of something fluffy that we don't need to talk about. But it's actually almost the glue to which holds or sustains the digital transformation process. Something that's quite important, in terms of how you begin to embed that. And again, this is something that we'll touch on, I suppose, later on. But it's a core component. It's almost, I feel, a make or break kind of situation in terms of the success of digital transformations that we've seen anyway. You've also touched on the next point, the lack of a success criteria. When you ask organizations what does success look like it often get a blank stare. And sometimes it's really around the lack of understanding as to when the end game is in a digital transformation. Like at what point can you determine if you've reached the end game, if you've actually kind of met the success criteria. And oftentimes we see that there is not a success criteria present. So it becomes almost like this moving target where you're constantly chasing something quite elusive and something quite vague, but you're on a transformation journey with no specific kind of, I suppose, perspective on success. And that's something that I guess can almost you burn out over time, in terms of the transformation process and in terms of the enthusiasm around the need for change and so on. That ties in also into the fear of the unknowns, because there's all these risks I suppose are present. If you want to invest in a new strategy, new technologies, for example, you're trying to promote the need for AI in your organization, but that comes with all these risks, I suppose, embedded. Without the certainty around what success looks like, what the return on investment is, even what the return on experience is. So it raises kind of a lot of questions around risk and the trade-offs between the unknown, this kind of digital transformation voyage that you're trying to bring an organization through, but you lack the I suppose your specific criteria of success and the risks along the journey also. And of course, with risk, that brings waste and cost and everything else. So that leads into, I suppose, issues around cost control. It leads into kind of, I suppose, more issues around tensions between management and people that are trying to drive the transformation process. So it creates a lot of tension along the way between risk, control, success, and so on.
I gotcha. Cost control, that's an interesting one. You can, especially with new technologies, it can be kind of expensive to get started sometimes. And I can see projects that get started and then kind of run out of funding. And so they can't quite see it through to the finish line, right, to reap those benefits. Okay, before we go on to the next slide, I wanted to lean in on one really quick, just a point here, lack of culture. This is one of the reasons why we have Lucas here. Lucas is part of a culture that is very innovative, fast moving. And because of that, he's being empowered to achieve success in the area of citizen development for digital transformation. So I hope we get to hear a little bit about your culture, Lucas, when we get to you. Okay, next slide. So that was the cause. Now here's the part I'm really interested in is what is your solution hypothesis? What can we do about this 70% failure rate?
So I'm beginning to see that, all the challenges or issues that are experienced in digital transformation, that whole world, I'm beginning to see really good fit in terms of citizen development. And again, like with all these kind of change management or kind of IT strategies, there's a really nice balance between people, process, and technology. And I suppose I've learned a lot from the PMI citizen development body of knowledge as well. So anybody out there that's interested in this work, I'd highly recommend the citizen development handbook on this. But the really nice thing is that it really touches on empowering people, improving processes, and introducing that low-code, no-code technology. And from a digital transformation perspective, if you take these individually quite quickly now, empowering people, it allows you to empower the business users as as change makers to sustain the transformation process. The improving process allows the end users to engage in the hyper-agile approach towards innovation application development, and the low-code, no-code, it enables the enterprise, I suppose, developers and citizen developers to drag and drop applications. Now, the nice thing about this is, as I began to, I suppose, learn more and more about what citizen development, as a method, as an approach, as a philosophy, and I began to align this then with my view on digital transformation. So I've included that there at the bottom of the slide. For example, empowering people, it sort of introduces a new culture around empowering, or the idea of people being change makers, encouraging people to innovate and so on. It also introduces new structures around how we can now have those, kind of certain, I suppose, guidance, in terms of change, and the experience, not only externally, for clients, but also internally, for software developers or for business users. It allows us to kind of feel that sense of empowerment and to feel involved and engaged in a transformation process. Without that sense of engagement, or without that sense of of belonging as such into a transformation process, you can lose people, and you almost lose the dressing room, as they would say, where you lose the team environment and so on. When you begin to look at improving the process, it allows you to look at the structures, and by structures here as well, I mean the guardrails which citizen development introduces. It also allows us to look at the value that it incorporates, not only from a technical perspective or a business perspective, but also that kind of a social science view. It makes you feel that you're involved in the transformation process. It allows you to feel value in terms of what you can do to change the process. And that has a knock-on effect and a very positive effect in terms of the experience that's shared internally across teams, but also externally, and that engagement that you have with clients. And the final piece in terms of technology, it provides you again with the guardrails, but it also provides you with the kind of drag and drop approach and the structures towards innovative, I suppose, solutions and platforms, and it increases our expectations around what's possible with the platform in question. And that becomes a really nice and rich kind of digital resource where it allows you to plug and play, if you like, to new processes, but it also allows your employees to develop almost like a citizen development portfolio of solutions. And again, it really empowers them to play a role in the digital transformation process. So I can see a really nice alignment between citizen development plugging right in to digital transformation and addressing many of the issues that we've outlined earlier.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like the way you laid this out with the people, process, and technology. It's not just about the technology, as you said, with digital transformation. And citizen development aligns with that fact because you're developing the people, the guardrails and the processes and the technology all together so that you're whole. And that should address the failure rate. Okay, thank you for that. Very helpful. I'm going to go to the next slide here. And so this is kind of our segue into your discussion with Lucas. But okay, so citizen development, that's a hypothesis that you have that it will help with the failure rate. How are you going to test that hypothesis?
Well, the key thing for me, I suppose, really is, from a research perspective, is to engage with industry. So people like Lucas, for example, or any participants here that that's online at the moment, or anybody that's going to watch this later. I suppose key for me is to try and learn about, I suppose, the science behind citizen development and digital transformation. So I'd welcome the opportunity to work with clients, actually lift the bonnet on the digital transformation process or lift the hood to find out what's actually happening in terms of the organizational processes. How does actually citizen development complement the kind of digital transformation process? And you provide, I suppose, feedback to clients as well in terms of the experiences and expectations from their clients and their customers. So it's kind of a win-win. It's kind of a value co-creation a relationship where I come in and you provide research and provide insights into into their solutions, into their business operations and so on. And we try to develop I suppose, a body of knowledge around experiences or approaches to the adoption of citizen development and its value or benefits, and indeed its challenges, warts and all.
Warts and all. Thank you for the image. Okay, so you're basically testing your hypothesis by engaging with industry and people who are working on citizen development in the real world. Lucas is one of those examples, and so we're going to pivot now to talking with Lucas. So I've got a slide here on Lucas. Before we introduce Lucas, I want to speak a little bit to this citizen development maturity model in the upper right corner. This is the model that the Project Management Institute has introduced. They recommend not just trying to tackle citizen development in a big bang all at once, but to step through it in multiple phases, going from discovery, experimentation, adoption, all the way to innovating. And I'll explain each one of these just briefly so that we can get to Lucas quickly. But discovery is when you, as an individual, use a low-code, no-code platform to solve a business problem. And you basically discover that, holy cow, this citizen development thing works. Okay. Experimentation is when you then scale it to other people. You try it out with other people, like make sure that it wasn't a fluke that you were successful one time. And so in experimentation, you might bring in people from other groups, other use cases to make sure that they can be successful with citizen development as well. Once you've validated that it is successful in experimentation, you move to adoption and you approach the C-suite and say, I'd like to make this a cultural way of doing work here at our company. And when you get approval from the C-suite in the adoption phase, you develop your operating model. Those are the guardrails that Noel was talking about and how you're structured to scale this up. Moving into the scaling phase, really you're just implementing your operating model at scale and continuously improving that operating model for success. And then lastly, you reach innovating, which is where citizen development is just part of your culture. When new employees join your organization, they immediately understand that citizen development and empowerment to make a difference is part of the culture that everybody gets to participate in. Okay, so with that, explaining that, I think Lucas, we'll turn it over to you. Introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself, but then also tie it to where are you at Rad Power Bikes in this maturity model?
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Noel. As you can see here on the slide, I've got a long history of working in quality management and quality assurance functions. My brief history dates back to working for Clean Canteen to build their quality system from scratch, and that's actually become my favorite opportunity is to find businesses that need to make that next transformation into a quality management system. And I found the opportunity again at Rad Power Bikes, and that's why we're here. And as Matt kind of indicates here, we have completed the discovery phase with our TrackVia program, and a handful of applications have been built internally. But we've also progressed into the experimentation phase, as is outlined by the maturity model, because we are now cross-functionally developing apps. And with that, we are working to focus and lean in more directly on how the citizen development program will develop at Rad Beyond and move us into adoption and scaling, and as well as innovation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lucas. I am going to now turn things over to Noel. Noel, have at it. Conduct your research on Lucas.
Make it happen. Okay. I suppose first of all, like with any new adoption or any new innovation, I'm always interested first, to learn about the need, to transform. What was the rationale for it? So, I suppose to kick things off, how did you actually take stock of how things currently operated in terms of your current software or digital practices?
Yeah, that's a great question. So early on when I joined Rad, my focus was obviously on the quality management system. And I'll touch on some of the other components of transformation as they come up. But for this first response, just kind of focusing in on that because that was my objective one. And our QMS system at Rad was practically still in the concept phase when I came on board. And that fact, coupled with fast-paced growth rates, indicated to me that we had a great deal of business systems maturity leaps coming our way, as well as organizational growth. Right, the business itself, the company itself, was still, was openly hiring up to 100 people at any given time, and that's still the case for our current, based on our current success. So I could tell that a lot of change was coming down the pipe soon. But on the plus side, I recognized that I had a blank slate to start with as far as the system itself, right? There was nothing but opportunity in front of me. However, that did present a long list of unknowns that I had to anticipate and I knew I would need to adapt to, or I being, my efforts towards developing the system. As I was taking stock as well of the same, question of where are we at digitally versus manually, there were already many departments that were using whatever available software tools they could to acquire and create and manage their databases, but there were still some paper processes as well. Our service department was still writing out paper tickets. A lot of inventory controls was managed via paper. I think the next step was really just about spreadsheets beyond digital. It was either on paper or in the spreadsheet world. So I knew from that, from my experiences at previous projects and businesses that we were poised for that transformation. It was going to be a necessity because we wouldn't be able to continue to maintain our scalability, still working with paper systems. And at that time, the ERP had only just barely been onboarded, and so it was still not well utilized or well understood by by even the lead operators of the tool. And so that kind of all comes together to and as I guess it's complementary to the fact that our culture was already poised and ready for anything new that could potentially optimize a supplemental or centralized database, because we had a lot of silo procedures and systems being developed that were solving people were solving their own problems in their own world and using whatever tool they could reach. And so that became I understood that to be an opportunity. It would present challenges, but it was also an opportunity. And so one of my first tasks, as I said, was to shop for QMS software. And as I shopped for these software options, a commonality amongst pre-configured software platforms, which I was familiar with, was that they have a complexity already embedded, and there's additional time and money investment required in order to customize these platforms beyond their pre-configuration into, particularly at Rad, and to meet our unique industry needs and our business scale. Because again, we were essentially a blank slate, but we needed to scale up rapidly. At the time, I actually recommended to my director that we slow down the QMS acquisition process so that me and my two team members, 2 years ago, could take some time and build a functional construct of the QMS using the applications and databases that I was watching other people use. So I was like, whoa, I don't want to get something pre-configured because I don't know what we need. I don't know what is going to solve the problems here because I'm still sorting out all the problems and defining them.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I was encouraged to keep shopping, which we did. And within a week or two of that conversation with my director, we met the folks from TrackVia. We needed flexibility to build but I knew we needed flexibility to build our QMS functions at an effective scale. And we also needed the potential to produce and iterate these data management tools at a rapid pace. And so when TrackVia introduced the low-code platform to me, I realized very quickly that it could be leveraged by any Rad team member that was facing a problem. They could create their own solutions. And TrackVia introduced that option to me as an offering, right, the low-code platform itself. And it only took about, really within a meeting or two on my part for me to recognize that this is an easy decision, because I could see how the low-code option would future-proof our investment, and with the inherent agility and flexibility that would allow us to sometimes build from scratch if we needed to, or incorporate some of these existing databases or processes and flows that other folks have been created. We could, the TrackVia would accommodate that, but we could always iterate at scale, and that really, is what drove the decision home for me to leverage low code for the transformation that was, obviously a necessity for us.
Okay, that's really interesting. So were you aware at the time, about the movement in citizen development, or did the low code, no code platform come first, and then you began to think about citizen development?
Interestingly enough, this was all discovery for me. So I've spent the last 10 years, in previous iterations and previous jobs, just doing this because it was necessity and reaching for the tools that I had at hand, and a lot of times building in Excel because that was, the free platform, and then learning ways to integrate that with other functions and learning ways to, share information, automate information sharing and tracking. So when I learned of citizen development, for me, it was essentially a light bulb. And it represented a common practice that I had already put into place, but now suddenly there was a language that was describing it and a definition, a program. So the resources that PMI were putting out and that TrackVia was helping me find, they really, it was a game changer. I ended up, diving into the content, and instead of learning, I was obviously learning something new, but a majority of what I was doing was finding out that there was that this was a movement, and I unknowingly had been part of it, and now I had a community. I could sense that there was a community growing, and I needed to be a part of that community in order to continue to leverage what's been successful for me, as well as learn more and and participate in driving that movement further.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really interesting. So obviously you're a core driver, within the organization around citizen development, but one aspect of understanding the need to transform is around internalization. So it's around how does a team actually go about trying to understand the value, the benefits, the importance of citizen development. So how did you actually go about trying to convince your team members of its benefit, its values, and so on?
Definitely by example. So at first, I'm introducing folks at a high level to the TrackVia platform and low code in general. I would get some good, I would get interest levels that were, I guess, surface level. It wasn't until I started describing problems and demonstrating. So again, it's like that, as we transitioned into the experimentation phase, I was showing off that really sports car version of a low code application that could solve many problems. And so I gave people, I kind of went on a road show with the colleagues that were within proximity to me cross-functionally to folks that I knew, like who were using these paper systems, for example. I pulled those managers into meetings and said, hey, this is what we're using. I'm really excited about it. We started from nothing and look at all this functionality we could get. And it was really rewarding to see, even in this new on-screen only kind of interaction, because this was definitely during these post-pandemic meetings, but even on the screen to see that moment of other people having that light bulb and thinking to themselves, oh, I need this. This is something that is going to make my job even better. Like I'm trying to, I'm really trying hard to force the Excel spreadsheet into this function, or trying to squeeze as much out of it as I can. But whoa, this thing is going to do it with drag and drop, and it's going to do it and take it to the next level. And so so it's really about the demo. Really, I think having a demo that speaks to my problems, but then and how they're solved, but then is transferable to others.
That's really cool. And just in terms of the overall team commitment, then how did you actually get them to, I suppose, get a sense that they are now committed to citizen development, that you're playing an active role, that you're on a transformation journey as such, that there's that kind of sense of maintaining momentum?
For sure. For me, I think it would go back to culture, that I benefited from that culture of innovation, as Matt said, problem solving, fast-paced, rapid growth. Everyone was really hungry for something to make their life easier, to solve their problems, to efficiently and effectively create improved flows and metrics. So I think it was really, it just kind of went back to, hey, look at what I have. Come check out this tool, and and by the way, it can work for you. It's not just QMS. It's it's something that, here, give it a try. So most of the light bulb moments would just, and the commitments would come from identifying what was their biggest problem, talking through how they could leverage this and what resources would be available for them, and how we could collaborate to just help to empower them to solve their own problems.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So as part of that buy-in as well, it's important that I suppose team members get a sense that they're actually contributing, that they're playing a role in that. Did you get any sense that there were certain techniques or certain aspects, or even artifacts that were important, to get a sense that your team can actually play a role in this, or that they felt valued in the transformation process?
I think key there for us is, a common best practice in business in general is to help everyone understand how this aligns with the overall company mission and overall strategic objectives. So, and as we were talking through, like, how this tool and how this new program and this alliance that we were creating would benefit us, it was always, I was always continuing to reflect back on, how does this align with our value system? How does this point towards the mission itself, and help us achieve our mission? But then also, what objectives are you facing, right? So then getting to know and understand the problems of my team members really helped to create that bridge that was, okay, we are all one team, and we all have a way to contribute to something new and something exciting. And by that I mean a citizen development program internally that we could create. It's for us, by us, but it serves the greater good.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So you've got the rationale. Okay. So you've got the need. Now you've got the buy-in. So people are game. So now you need to actually operationalize it, and actually you make things happen as such on the ground. So how did you actually make it, I suppose, workable? It's a phrase that's often used, in terms of citizen development. How did you convince your team to adopt new skills, and how did you make new resources available to them?
I think an important contributing factor here is the services provided by TrackVia. If this was just a software platform that was purchased, and and there wasn't any follow-up, even beyond just the occasional service call, I don't think we would be as far along as we are So having because that's the resource really that we've been leveraging to develop the skills internally. We need the experts that have already got those skills. And so I've been really leaning heavily with the implementation engineers with TrackVia and connecting those with my citizen development partners. So it's not like all the doors are open, right? And I think that might be the key strategic approach here, that's encourage people to develop their own skills when they have the time or when they have the interest. But if you don't have that as well, because not everyone does have the time to really get to that far, that level of expertise, even in the simplicity of low code, or like, for example, script writing in the background is something that we're still working to adopt and develop. It's been comforting for all my colleagues, myself as well, to know that like we have a support group essentially along this path, and it's both with the helping us optimize how we use the platform, but then also now the ongoing interactions that I have with Matt and his colleagues, where we focus on citizen development, and we really have been embracing the PMI program definitions. That gives us a roadmap, and it gives us kind of a reference point to define, optimize, mature and develop our citizen development program, as well as all the apps and the tools. And so and I'm constantly trying to assuring that my team understands, that my team and the team of our citizen developers, that you build a new app, you're contributing to this citizen development program. And what do we need to do? We meet weekly, we meet bi-weekly now with the core group of citizen developers to review our progress, to review our interactions, to review our collaborations, to identify obstacles or milestones that we want to drive towards together, in order to continue to really just mature this function and this portion of culture, right? We could call it a citizen development program, but I think it's more, for me, I'm leaning more into developing a citizen development, or to nurturing a citizen development culture at Rad, so that it becomes part of what we all do, embrace, and understand.
That's really interesting. So, as part of operationalizing, there's a code part in that I think I might have mentioned previously around relational integration, where you begin to look at how do you build accountability into the overall practice. How do you try to maintain confidence, amongst the citizen developers that this is, the right track? Have you any experience on that?
I think because we're early on in the stage, I think we're just scratching the surface of some of those challenges. But again, I think it's really about community, right? And embracing the fact that we are all in this together. And so when someone has a challenge or something they're uncertain about, whether it be, can they make the platform work in this way? We come together as a team, and we talk about what we know, what we don't know, what's theoretical, what challenges we've seen, because each one of us in our interactions with the platform, with the low code tool, have challenged new, taking it on new challenging paths. And so we're constantly, and I'm leading the team back together in these regular meetings to say, okay, what are you working on? What's your next? So it's like, what have you overcome? What are you facing now? What do you anticipate in the future? And we're just keeping those conversations alive and building that community approach.
That's brilliant, and it ties into the whole kind of hyper agile world, as well, I guess. So again, like, you've identified the need, the rationale, you've got the buy-in, you've got people to operationalize it. But now, in terms of impact and value of the transformation, that's obviously key to ensure that you've got this kind of sense of momentum again, that people experience that there is a real impact on this. How is the impact of citizen development actually appraised by team members and by yourself?
Yeah, I think it's overwhelmingly appreciated and empowering, and I think that's the key that is really that's the game changer. I think in the title of this webinar is that we're putting the power in the hands of the I would say frontline workers, or the subject matter experts, those that are facing this challenge every day and have been developing their own workarounds or dreaming about their own workarounds. Now they have a tool to streamline the effort and take it out of the paper and pencil, and get those filing cabinets out of their way of their office space, and turn it in, and transform it into a digital world, but not just for the sake of we're not replacing physical filing cabinets with digital filing cabinets where, you know, spreadsheets just stack up and live and they aren't fully leveraged within a centralized database. This gives us the opportunity to say, okay, this table of information is key and critical to us. And we have those discussions amongst our team members. What's critical to you? What's critical to me? Should we make one table or two tables? How can we optimize to make sure we're not proliferating, you know, more stack ups of tables in the same way that spreadsheets and you know, formal and real papers can stack up? How can we, you know, build this so that it is, you know, a core foundation of what everybody needs? And I think that's the key and the empowerment and then the manifestation of that centralization to see like, oh, cool. Well, there's a lot of moments I've noticed where we're bringing in maybe a new team member and they're talking about a need or an opportunity or a challenge. And we could just go, you know, into the system and say, okay, you mean like this table right here? Is this what you want? We can add this column right here. And then this whole table that we've already built is going to serve your needs. Is that correct? You know, and that's the, you know, the appraisal from that. It's a light bulb moment. It's the empowering moment, and they buy in. You know, they really just want to jump in. And I've concluded many of these meetings where folks are like, when can I start? Can I, you know, I'm like, hey, I already got you the login. You know, you've got a user account. I've got you a seat now. Go ahead. I've opened up these apps. Do some discovery, do some exploration, and you come back to me, and we'll put you on the roadmap.
Brilliant. That's really cool. I'm also a big believer that, you know, like a digital transformation has a ripple effect. You know, it's got a knock-on effect across the whole organization. So, like from the outset of the presentation, I kind of outlined that it has an impact on structures and how we embed culture. So, in terms of, you know, the organizational structure or new social norms, have you experienced anything on the ground that you felt there's a real sense of change amongst people, or there's a real sense of there's something different here as opposed to just new technology?
Yeah, actually, it's a great question, and you know, it's a bit of a you know, tingly moment in just thinking about this change, because until you asked me that question, I really hadn't even found these examples. But what's been happening is instead of, and it's a simple answer, but like it still has like a lot of power to it, a lot of magnitude. What used to happen is if someone was facing a problem, they'd open up their computer, put their headphones on, and jam on whatever tool they had, you know, build their spreadsheet, build their smart sheet, you know, open up a new folder in Dropbox and start, you know, creating this filing system. But what's happening now, which is different and really exciting, is that they're coming together. They're thinking, okay, I need to include this person, and we're going to put a meeting together, and we're going to collaborate, and we're going to talk about our shared problem statement. These are cross-functional, you know, managers, supervisors, individual contributors who are recognizing that, hey, this is the solution, and it also affords me the opportunity to build together, which is what we want, right? Because we've had enough of, you know, folks, those of us who've been here for a while, we know that sitting there in the silo, it's only going to get you so far. You can solve one problem, but you're not really solving the enterprise problem or a scalable problem. So it's really exciting to me to think, and I'm only reflecting back on the last few weeks, you know, of folks talking to me and keeping me updated on what they're working on, that it's very different. That social, you know, that social interaction is it's just much more collaborative because folks feel empowered to build, you know, something that's more than just, you know, data in a data table. It's a function. It's smooth. It's got, you know, user interface and a lot of, you know, and it turns into a workflow in the platform itself, as opposed to saying, well, go from this sheet, then go from this sheet, and go from this sheet, or then open this file and then send this email. We can just embed all that into the system.
Sure. And like I believe that's got a, you know, ripple effect internally within the organization, but also externally in terms of your customers and clients. They also kind of pick up on this kind of sense of innovation and transformation. Not only are you transforming internally, but I think you're also transforming external expectations around what you now deliver as an organization. So that's really cool. I suppose I'm conscious of time, but what's next then for Rad Power Bikes? So I know you're on the first two phases in terms of discovery and experimentation, and there's also adoption, scaling, and innovating. So what's next, or where do you see this stuff?
So we're really focusing in on, optimizing the adoption across, key stakeholders at Rad. So Matt and I were just talking. There's a desired state to get to where your C-suite, where your chiefs are all like fully aware and fully embracing citizen development. We're still working towards that. So many new growth, exponential growths in our organization have happened in the last 2 years that like I can put a plan together and 3 months later and have a list of people that I think are going to be the key change makers for me. And if 2 or 3 months goes by or a week goes by, oh, guess what? We've just expanded. We've opened up our org with a whole new level, and we've got six new senior level managers with 10 years experience that are now here to help. And so I have to kind of reset and adjust according to that, which is it adds more time because we're always adapting to all these changes. But so for next, where we used to be targeting the C-suite, now the term I used just anecdotally with Matt was I need to get our next target is the B-suite. So we have a whole new level of business and systems managers that have come on board just to optimize business practices, and they've been positioned cross-functionally as key operational and systems developers and innovators, and that's where I'm going next, is to get to bring them. A couple of them are already leveraging TrackVia, the platform. So I've got a few already that have just found their way to it because the people that I talked to, their managers that I talked to a few weeks ago, have said, hey, I want to use this TrackVia thing. Let's go talk to Lucas. So we open up the door for them, get them their user logins, and they're off and running. So I want to leverage that. We'll be leveraging that success to bring the rest of the business team together with more engagement from IT. So we have IT endorsement, but what we need next is IT engagement. I want someone from that IT department to be assigned as the citizen development ambassador, so that everything we do can be, will be approved or endorsed by this ambassador, but then also, the information and the status can flow both ways. So they go tell the IT group what we're working on. IT group says, great, keep doing that. Or they say, actually, we've got bigger plans, so can you hold off on that? And, if you wait a month, we've got something coming down the pipe, so we're working on that. And we can kind of just share information and share the development process. But in our, but again, like embrace the fact that we're developing at different skill sets and for different problems and different levels of the business.
That's really interesting. And I'm really getting a sense of the value in terms of, I suppose, mentorship and training, coaching internally as well. So that's something I think that's really apparent here.
I think so. Yeah, it's something to share. I think that folks should acknowledge, like, you'll need somebody to be the ambassador for citizen development, and that person will then need to go out and find more colleagues, more support along the way.
Really interesting. But I think that's all the questions we have time for at this point. I'll hand you back to Matt.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Noel. Thank you, Lucas. I love listening to you guys. I could talk about this all day long, and it is only in the interest of time that we're moving on. Noel and Lucas, I assume that you're going to continue with the research, talking to each other regularly. Noel, you'll be checking in and getting new information as Lucas progresses in his journey. But thank you for taking the hour to do this. So we are now nearing the end, and guys, I actually want to compliment everyone here. We are on time. This does not happen very much, especially if I am at the helm, because I can talk and talk and talk, and things tend to go over. So good job. We are now going to move on to the Q&A portion. For Q&A, I'll ask that you submit your questions via the chat window, and we will try to get through all of them. If we don't get through one of them, we will follow up by email for those that we don't get a live answer to. So I'm looking at the chat right now. It looks like there was a comment about, let me just kind of read this comment. Okay, so I'm reading no questions yet, but we did have a comment. Employees lack digital skills, self-confidence, creativity, and ambition to take a risk. Any transformation is a risk. Okay, so that's an observation. Noel, I'm going to kind of toss that to you. What are your thoughts about that? And then Lucas, if you would also come on that, because you have practical experience there as well.
Yeah, so it's correct. Like I guess that there is a lack of that digital, I suppose, transformation know-how. And I guess this is where I'm beginning to make that nice connection between, I suppose, citizen development in terms of its overall method, its philosophy, and everything else. How that begins to now offer this way to embed that, I suppose, that improved training or coaching approach, towards understanding the need, I suppose, around digital skills, around self-confidence, creativity, ambition. I think this is exactly where citizen development actually comes in. It encourages creativity, innovation. It encourages that low risk solution development and then scale it. So I completely agree with the comment, and I would suggest that citizen development actually plays a key role in trying to address all of them issues.
All right, very good. And Lucas, how about you? And I'll repeat what, you can probably see it on your end. What are your thoughts about this?
I totally agree with Nikolai. The risk is real, and those challenges about skill sets are real. I think that my suggestion, or my mitigation approach would be to put the time in on the front end to develop a robust transformation plan and identify those risks. Like, oh, do we have the skills? Do we have the the technical skills, the technical know-how to move forward in this direction? And if are we even strong, strong enough in low code? And if not, then what can we do, right? So what can we do to train or build up our capabilities, create that plan, and make it realistic and practical? So maybe you aren't ready to implement transformation today, but you could start the journey by preparing your team and setting some baseline skill set trainings up to get you to that point where you are in the future prepared for that. And then the other suggestion or recommendation I would have is seek out subject matter experts, seek out external resources, folks like Matt, who are champions of this movement, to provide that guidance and to assess your situation, because it's unique to your business and your teams, so they can help you with customizing your implementation plan.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I think there are kind of two sides to this. There are the skills, the digital skills with the platform that you're using, like TrackVia, right? So you have to become proficient at that platform. And so hopefully the platform that you're using offers good training, online, on demand, free, for you to learn the tool. But then there are also all the soft side skills that you need to pick up, right? And that's where PMI is coming in and bringing training dedicated to those soft side skills that will help you safely and securely scale. Okay. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any at the moment. Okay. All right. I think what we'll do is I'm going to pivot to the next slide, because I want, and by the way, when I pivot to the next slide, if you have a question, still submit it, because we do have 3 minutes left and we might be able to answer that. All right. I'm seeing a comment here that there are no questions because Noel and Lucas sufficiently answered everything that is possible. That's funny. Okay. So this last slide, this is our contact information, and I don't dole this out lightly. Like, seriously, we're giving you all avenues to contact us because we want to engage with you. So at the top, there's my contact information. I got my email, LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Please engage with me. And there's our TrackVia website, and then finally a free trial. You can sign up for a free trial of TrackVia, and you don't even have to talk to anybody. It's brilliant. You click free trial, and then it walks you through a couple screens, and next thing you know, you're up and running with TrackVia and that TrackVia University that I talked about, so you can learn it on your own. But know that we are there if you need us. I would recommend, I know this is a lot of information for contact, so if you want to capture it, just do a screenshot right now, and that will make sure that you've got all our information. And then Noel, we've got his email, LinkedIn, website, Twitter, etc. But he wanted to emphasize to me that he is doing research, not just with Lucas, but anybody in industry that is working on citizen development / digital transformation. And so he'd love to connect with you if you want to engage in his research. I don't want to speak for you, Noel, so maybe you could put a plug in for that.
No, I appreciate the plug. So no, I'm quite open to engaging with anybody online here that's interested, I guess, in citizen development or in the process of adopting it, just to, I suppose, understand your experience and maybe guide you as well throughout the whole process in terms of what we've learned from other organizations, and also how you might be able to steer the digital transformation process. So I'm happy to give, any insights or carry out any research. So the details are there. So I'm open for business, as they say. So this is a free collaboration also. So we're just like there to learn from you and also support you, in terms of trying to make sense of the transformation process.
All right, very good. Thank you, Noel. And then lastly, we've got Lucas's information. He is a wealth of experience, frontline experience with citizen development. And so feel free to reach out to Lucas if you want to get some of that frontline advice and wisdom. And I will, before we close here, I think we probably have about 30 seconds. One question came in. How do you rein in your citizen developers from going crazy and adding views for every little thing rather than looking at how to enhance current views? So that is a fantastic question. We are out of time. So I will just say that, like, one of the ways that Lucas is able to mitigate that is he meets with his team of citizen developers every other week, and they are brainstorming together to keep things in check constantly. There's more to that answer, and we will get that to you. And it does look like there may have been another question come in, so we will be sure to respond. I'm going to flip to the last page here, which is just a TrackVia, your ideas, your app. So again, thank you. We are at time. Noel, Lucas, appreciate your time, and everybody who attended. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.